Every advisor has a story as to why they got into this business, and today I want to share mine. It's not about numbers and credentials. It's about family and faith and the lessons that I learned along the way. And my hope is that as you hear it, you'll hear the heart behind the work that we do here, and maybe it'll give you some clarity of your own journey. So we get down there and he's like, okay, financial planning is broken today. He's like, there's too much planning for clients instead of planning with clients. I'm like, no way.
Yeah. I remember that this season of life. It was a very busy time for our family.
The client then began also bringing in the perspectives they had heard along the way into those planning meetings.
Yeah.
This is exactly the kind of planning software I'm looking for and the kind of environment and culture that I would want to put my clients in. Everything changed.
Welcome back, everyone,
to
the Legacy Life podcast.
Yes.
This is our 30th episode.
Wow.
It's already been 30 weeks since we've been doing this.
That's crazy.
It's insane. It went by quick.
It did.
Yeah.
Wow. And we've learned a lot since we started.
We have.
Our first episode, we were sitting in 2 folding chairs.
We were, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
I was looking at that the other day, and I was like, oh, man, we're really going to keep that up. Okay.
Yeah.
So we can remember humble beginnings.
Absolutely. And we're just here just to talk and have conversation.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But I thought it would be good today to maybe just pause for a minute and kind of go away from a specific topic and kind of share a little bit about our story and like why we're even doing this, like why are we even in this business? And
right.
Because everyone has a story of why they're doing what they're doing. And so I just kind of want to maybe just go through memory lane a little bit and kind of share our journey, my journey from starting this and how we got to what we're doing today.
Right. I think earlier episode, we touched on it a little bit. We newer actually shared the whole story or anything like that. So I think it'd be good.
Yeah. And maybe, this episode we'll get to more detail and maybe 10 episodes later we'll
get to more.
There's more.
There's more.
This, yeah.
Turns out there's more.
Yeah.
So where do you want to start?
Yeah. Well, when I first got in this industry, I was trained with a very specific mindset. I started with a captive agency, at kitchen tables, talking to people about Medicare and final expenses.
What did you do before you got into this?
Yeah. So before I was in this, I was actually in the transportation industry. I worked for a third-party courier that basically delivered pharmaceuticals and office supplies. Staples was one of our biggest clients. And for like Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen, we would deliver pharmaceuticals, Staples, some Office Max stuff. You remember Office Max?
Oh, yeah.
And we had contracts with banks to pick up proof work, non-cash items to take to the Fed and have processed. And to make a long story really long, I ended up being a senior project manager and then a branch manager and took our family to Pennsylvania at one point out from Michigan. And I realized very quickly that a father of 3 young kids with one on the way, working 30-hour shifts, that was not going to work for our life. And that job was really for a single guy.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for something different at the same time. Or I was looking for something different, but at the same time that was happening, your mom actually found someone who's looking for, to recruit, people into this business for of it being, kind of like into life insurance and investment advisory, people who can educate on Medicare. And she says, I think you can really do good at this. You like talking to people, educating people. I think you could be good at this. And at the same time, your great grandmother was beginning to show signs and beginning to show some mental decline herself. And our family was coming around her and helping her transition. She couldn't live by herself anymore. And that was a real educating experience for me as well. And I'll kind of get into some of those details, but it was kind of like a perfect storm. I was changing careers. This thing was happening in family. It was like this career and what was happening with your great grandmother kind of all came together and kind of showed me a path.
Yeah. I remember that this season of life. It was a very busy time for our family.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
You take the good and the bad, but yeah, it was a very busy time for us.
Difficult.
Very difficult.
Very difficult time.
Yep.
It was like it was like the crunch, like you're switching careers. You have 4 kids.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing.
And you're in a basement with 90-day recycled leads
Yep.
going, I hope I make it, in this new commission-only career,
Yep.
But, as I got into it, about 6 months into this business, on paper, everything looked great.
Mm-hmm.
I was working 6 days a week, sun up to sundown. I was decorated. I was recognized. I won a lot of awards. I won trips, like all those things. So on paper, everything looked great. But honestly, after running that 6 days a week, sun up to sundown, I felt like, man, I feel like I'm still at the same pace I was with the career I left. And I remember just being at Sundays, my one day off, feeling like a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were young enough to be like, let's play, let's go do this. And I was just like dragging all the time. And I didn't like that feeling at all. And so I just felt like I was chasing the things that I was chasing, or the things that were happening to me were things that maybe really didn't actually matter to me. Even with all of the people would call me very successful. I was making, good money. I was making a good living, and I felt like I was helping people plan. But at the same time, I was watching my grandmother, your great grandmother, decline and go through this. And I was really doing a lot of soul searching as to why am I doing this? And your grandmother, remember the ex-Marine, she was a sharpshooter.
Yep.
Which I just learned recently that she was a sharpshooter. I didn't know that.
Oh, really?
Before. Yeah.
I've always heard the story. She was a drill sergeant in World War II.
Yeah,
but I never heard
sergeant.
she was
sharpshooter. Yep. Wrote poetry, right?
Yeah.
She was just an amazing woman. And I watched her go through a cognitive decline, and I watched the family step in. And these were situations that I was hearing about at kitchen tables all the time, with people having to do this with their loved ones. And I began, when you see what retirees go through in their families, and the planning that we're doing to help them, I just realized that preparing for real life like that was really what this was all about. It wasn't about me selling something. It was about me being able to help families that were going through things like mine.
Right.
That's really what the crux of it was, and why I wanted to do it. So like any journey, like you're saying, it had its ups and downs. And at first, even with that success, I really sensed that the Lord was leading me to deeper waters, if you will, to really go out to the unknown and just continue to learn. I started to see how big retirement planning was. It was outside of the little nucleus and stuff I was doing when I first started. I realized the world of this was much bigger. And so I really went after trying to learn more about this. I left the captive agency and kind of went out on my own with a couple business partners and really began to explore, okay, there's a lot out here that can be done for people. Let's learn about this. And I really just dove in. And I was able to see very quickly the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the very ugly that happens in this industry. And honestly, many times I found it really intimidating. When you'd listen and try to learn from other advisors, the language that they would use, I found at first like really confusing. And I remember starting to have feelings like, ooh, maybe I don't belong here in this industry. Because if I can't talk like a lot of these hotshot successful advisors, and I watched them be able to talk with people, and with their big words and polished suits and everything they were doing, then maybe I'm not cut out for this. I know they call that imposter syndrome, but I had it in spades. I was really going through this conflict inside, like, who do I have what it takes? I don't even know if I'm understanding what a lot of these people are talking about. And could I learn it? But then one day, I can remember this, I'm kind of sitting there, and this new thought hit me in the midst of that if I felt that way when I was listening to them, then maybe that's how clients must feel too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't just me. I'm like, oh, maybe this is how they're feeling as they're listening to all this as well. And maybe they're feeling, confused and overwhelmed, and maybe even a little embarrassed. Okay? Because it could be embarrassing. You sit in front of your colleagues and maybe you don't feel as well versed as they are. It can feel intimidating and embarrassing, right? And maybe the clients felt the same way, and maybe they just nod along and went along with it because they're inside. They're just like, well, this guy knows more than me, so I'll just trust it and just go with it.
Yep.
And so they just nod and pretend like they get it. And as I just saw that and was thinking through that, I was like, I don't like that. People should be able to understand their own planning, and they should feel confident and not confused. So this is where I really think my paradigm began to shift. And it was before COVID, but 2018, 2019, I really started to go through this wrestle of.
And this is like, by 2018, you'd have been in the business for 10 years.
Yep.
So like you'd been doing this for a decade in all different ways, shapes, and form.
Yeah.
All shapes and sizes, different parts of the business. You started with like Medicaid, Medicare. Then you did like life insurance and all these different things. Then you looked at like financial advising and all this.
Yeah.
And so right before COVID,
I started having this paradigm shift. I began to think like, well, I had like this idea. This is going to sound familiar to you, but it was kind of like, well, what if, instead of the traditional process, I started thinking through the process of how we deal with clients, which basically is like 1, meet with the client, gather information.
Yep.
Step 2, client goes away and I take the information and I put a plan together. Step 3, they come back for a second appointment and I present to them what I put together.
Yep.
Okay. What if, I'm like, instead of doing that, because again, people are confused and looking for clarity, what if I could develop a process where I could plan with the client, right there in the first meeting, where instead of me building something for them, they could be part of the process and seeing building it with them.
Yep.
Okay. They could see it come together in real time. They could give input. They could understand, how it works. We could educate. That way, it wouldn't be my plan anymore. It's their plan.
Right.
Right. It's something that we created together, but it's really them watching what their hard discipline of saving for retirement, right? What they are able to create with the hard work they did.
Yeah.
Okay. And, it seemed at first like too simple, but there's got to be a better way to do this, right? And so I'm like, man, there's got to be like some software out there where I could do this, it could work well. And like I'm going through all this, and then I'm not kidding, almost like 2 months after that happened, I met a guy named Paul Durso.
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, yeah, why don't you come down to our office? We're talking about XYZ, and this is who I am. And I really liked him, and we connected. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll go. And so we get down there, and he's like, okay, financial planning is broken today. He's like, there's too much planning for clients instead of planning with clients. I'm like, no way. Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay,
talking.
yeah, this is what I've been thinking about. And he's like, so here's the software we use. And he showed the software, and not only that, but he's like, he's a very tech-minded person. He created it from the floor up himself. He designed it. And I'm like, if there's a software out there that could do this, this, and this is what I'd want to use. And then he shows it. I'm like, I'm like, this is incredible. I'm like, this is exactly the kind of planning software I'm looking for, and the kind of environment and culture that I would want to put my clients in. And so from that day on, everything changed. And, my practice began to look completely different. I mean, the transition takes time. It doesn't happen in 30 seconds, but you began to start to plan differently and you begin to work the kinks out. But my clients weren't just spectators anymore. They were actually participants in the process. And it was a process of them beginning to finally see how the retirement plan was going to work and why it was going to work and why this investment over this investment would be preferred for what they were trying to accomplish versus something else. And so they could feel peace about it. It was like, it was just as important to show the client what did work and what didn't work in the same software. They could see why these investments wouldn't help them achieve their goal. So they could see both.
Yeah.
And to educate on both, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what works best as long as it does take care and the client understands how the income is going to be generated, how the legacy and wealth transfer is going to occur, all those things. But it was also interesting that once I started planning that way, that the client then began also bringing in the perspectives they had heard along the way into those planning meetings.
Yeah.
Okay. Things they had heard from friends, seen on the news, scrolled across social media. They were starting to bring a lot of that stuff because with the speed of information today, people can hear all sorts of things that are going on out there, right?
Right.
Because there's already a lot of ideas bouncing around out there. But you know what? I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I was glad for it, but it taught me something important. That part of my role isn't just educating clients on strategies that do work, it was also showing them, like I said, the ones that don't. And then bringing those perspectives in allowed and afforded us to have good conversations about those things.
Yep.
Because they could see as they're building from the ground up, it would spark things for them to say, well, I was reading an article on this, or my friend told me about this. And it really opened up the dialogue. It was great.
Yeah.
Because if we don't take this step, then people then are just going to be stuck in the old cookie cutter advice or Wall Street mantras or flashy trends that they've heard without anyone be able to speak into it or offering a different perspective, just going along with it. That's not going to actually help serve them. It's going to keep them in the old flow of the way things used to be. But, in this process, it really was like we had to slow down and really walk through what works and what doesn't and cut through the noise. And so, I really found that was when we started doing that. I'm like, this is how I want to plan for the rest of my career. This is what works well. Talking about the real problems, talking about everything, and having the client be involved. And I cannot tell you how many times we've heard, no one's ever done this for us, or they've said things like,
you just got one the other day.
But, oh man,
Yeah,
the compliment from one of my new clients just the other day. We've been talking with him for about 1.5 years, but yeah, he just said some of the nicest things to me. But that at the end, he says, I can really tell that based on us being able to talk through this plan and go through the process and you taking the time with me to flesh this out.
Because you've been talking to this guy for like 1 year or something.
Yeah,
like that,
right. And he said, I know you're going to take really good care of my family.
Yeah.
And I understand exactly what's happening and I know why it's happening. And he says, this is great. He says, I've talked to a lot of other financial consultants and he says, no one has ever done this. And that really meant a lot to me because we don't always get that kind of feedback, but a lot of times we do. And that means a lot because that reminds me, this is why I get up every day is to make sure that people can say that.
Yeah.
And that's why we got into this business. And so I really thank God for that. I thank him for showing up with his wisdom to point me in a simple direction. It seems like a very simple thing, but it's really a powerful concept. So, I mean, just imagine you're about ready to retire or you're in retirement. And just imagine that, you could see your plan being built in front of you. You could be educated and see exactly where the cash flow is going to come from and why this investment versus this one works better. And you could have the peace of mind and not a lingering doubt of if you're going to make it, but know for sure, what's going to happen. I think that's what people are really looking for. They want to feel protected, taken care of, and to know everything's going to be okay.
Yep.
So those early struggles of going through the process and being in an industry and being taken through the old training wheels,
powdered milk and beans.
Powdered milk and beans,
powdered
baby.
Milk and beans.
Yep.
I remember it.
Yep. But going through all of that,
yeah.
helped me be able to push me enough in the inside to come out what was really inside of me. To find the genuine place inside myself of what I wanted to apply in this industry.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it without those past experiences and hearing all those things and being challenged with feeling ignorant and embarrassed and, and having that epiphany about clients. I couldn't have done it without all that. So I thank God for that journey.
Yep.
And
he doesn't waste anything.
Right. And now here we are today. So Yeah, I think that's a good summary for now.
Yeah, I mean, there's always more, and probably share more in the future, but that's pretty much an overview.
Yep. But we're passionate about what we do here, and we believe in it.
Yeah, we may not be amazing at podcasting, but we're getting better at it.
We are. We've had 30 tries. We'll try 30.
Tries,
we'll do 30 more.
30 more.
Yep.
We'll get better at it.
Yep. So if my story resonates with you today, it's probably because you're not just thinking about money, but you're thinking about your family and your future. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that we can be in your house every Monday. And in the show notes below, there is a link to our calendar if you would like to have a free consultation to begin just having a conversation about you and your future. And if you want to start building a plan with us to help see what might be possible for your future, let us know. We'd love to spend some time with you. And if you have any comments, leave them in the comments section. If there's any topics you'd like us to cover, let us know. Until next time, thank you again for attending, and we'll see you soon.